They say you should never judge a book by its cover, but in a world obsessed with appearances, that lesson is often forgotten. And today, in the bustling heart of New York City, one luxury store was about to learn it the hard way. It was a bright Saturday morning on Fifth Avenue. The sidewalks were alive with the hum of traffic, the shuffle of designer shoes, and the murmur of tourists snapping pictures of the towering storefronts. In the middle of all this glamour and wealth, a woman named Evelyn stepped quietly through the crowd. Evelyn was in her late 60s, a black woman with silver streaks running through her neatly tied hair. Her clothes were simple: a faded cardigan, a modest floral dress, and shoes that had seen better days. She carried with her the kind of dignity that can't be bought, the kind built from decades of hard work, sacrifice, and love. But dignity, as Evelyn was about to learn, wasn't always recognized in places where luxury was sold. The store she entered was one of Manhattan's most exclusive boutiques, famous for its designer handbags, diamond jewelry, and gowns worth more than most people's yearly salaries. The glass doors glided open with a whisper, and instantly Evelyn felt the chill of polished marble floors beneath her feet. Inside, everything gleamed. Crystal chandeliers hung above racks of silk dresses. Glass cases sparkled with jewelry that seemed almost too bright to look at directly. Evelyn had never been in a store like this before. She wasn't here for herself. She rarely bought anything beyond what she needed. But today was special. Her daughter, Maya, was celebrating a major milestone in her life, and Evelyn wanted to surprise her with something meaningful. She didn't want to buy just any gift. She wanted to give her daughter something extraordinary, something that said, "I am proud of you, and you deserve the very best." What Evelyn didn't realize was that the moment she walked through those doors, the employees had already made their judgments. Behind the glass counters, two sales associates glanced up. One was Jessica, a tall blonde woman in her early 30s, dressed head to toe in the latest fashion. The other was Lauren, a younger associate who followed Jessica's lead in almost everything. Jessica's eyes swept over Evelyn, and in that instant, her lips curled into a smirk. Lauren whispered, loud enough for Jessica to hear, "She must be lost." Jessica chuckled softly and muttered, "Or maybe she thinks this is a thrift shop." Evelyn, too focused on the dazzling displays, didn't catch their words. She walked slowly, her eyes wide with wonder as she admired the craftsmanship around her. Every detail felt overwhelming: shoes displayed like works of art, handbags locked away as if they were treasures in a museum. She finally stopped at a display of elegant necklaces, her heart tugging at the thought of how beautiful one would look on her daughter. Gathering her courage, Evelyn approached the counter. She smiled warmly and asked Jessica if she could take a closer look at one of the necklaces. Jessica raised an eyebrow and let out a short laugh, as though she had just heard the most ridiculous request of the day. "These pieces start at $15,000, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Lauren snickered beside her, covering her mouth with a perfectly manicured hand. The words stung, but Evelyn stood her ground. She had endured far worse in her lifetime. She simply nodded and said, "Yes, I'd like to see it." But Jessica wasn't about to take her seriously. Instead, she leaned against the counter, her arms crossed, and looked Evelyn up and down. "We don't usually take items out unless a client is ready to make a purchase," she said slowly, as though speaking to a child. "Maybe you'd prefer to look at something more affordable. We have a clearance section in the back." The laughter that followed wasn't just cruel, it was humiliating. Other customers began to notice, whispering and chuckling as Evelyn stood there, her cheeks burning. Yet Evelyn didn't raise her voice. She didn't storm out. She didn't let their mockery define her. Because Evelyn knew something they didn't. She knew that her daughter, her beloved Maya, wasn't just any woman. She was a powerful businesswoman, a self-made millionaire who had built her empire from scratch. And at that very moment, Maya was only a few blocks away, finishing a meeting and heading straight toward the boutique. The stage was set for a moment none of them would ever forget. And the question that lingers for you, watching this unfold, how would you react if you saw someone treated like this? Would you step in? Or would you stand by in silence? Evelyn tried to keep her composure, but the sting of the saleswoman's laughter weighed heavily on her heart. She had never been a woman of extravagance, never someone who cared about brands or labels, but she had always valued kindness and respect. And in this place, in this shining palace of wealth and glitter, she felt smaller than she had in years. She walked slowly toward another display, hoping to avoid further embarrassment, but the whispers followed her. Jessica and Lauren weren't done with their little game. Lauren leaned closer to Jessica and muttered, "She probably doesn't even know what Cartier is." Jessica giggled, not even bothering to lower her voice this time. "I bet she'll faint when she sees the price tags." A couple browsing near the jewelry counter overheard and glanced at Evelyn. Instead of offering her empathy, they joined in the silent judgment, their expressions smug and superior. To them, she wasn't a potential client. She was a trespasser in their world of luxury. Evelyn paused at a collection of diamond bracelets, her eyes lingering on a delicate piece with a small emerald in the center. The green stone reminded her of Maya's birthstone. Her fingers hovered above the glass, but before she could even ask to see it, Jessica's voice sliced through the air. "Ma'am," Jessica said, her tone sharp and dismissive, "that bracelet is $35,000. It's not for everyone." The words landed like a slap. Evelyn felt her chest tighten. She wanted to tell them why she was here, that her daughter had worked harder than anyone she had ever known, that today was about love and celebration, not about money. But instead, she simply swallowed her pride, because that was what she had done her whole life endured, cruelty and silence. Yet her silence only fueled their arrogance. Lauren leaned over the counter, smiling sweetly, though her words were laced with venom. "You know, we have some cute little charms near the register. Much more affordable. Maybe you'd like to check those out instead?" Evelyn looked into her eyes, searching for a shred of decency, but all she found was mockery. And then it happened. The store manager, Mr. Collins, appeared from the back office. He was a tall man in his 40s, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, with a smugness that seemed to radiate from him. Jessica quickly waved him over, eager to pull him into the spectacle. "Mr. Collins," she said with a laugh, "this lady here wants to see the diamond collection." Collins looked Evelyn up and down, his eyes scanning her cardigan, her worn shoes, her calloused hands. A slow, mocking smile spread across his face. "Well," he said, his voice thick with sarcasm, "if you can afford the worst room, I'll give you the suite." The words weren't just cruel. They were calculated to humiliate her in front of everyone. Jessica and Lauren burst into laughter, and even a couple of customers smirked, as if the insult were some kind of entertainment. Evelyn stood frozen, her dignity crumbling under the weight of their cruelty. But what no one realized was that Evelyn wasn't helpless. She didn't need to defend herself, because fate had already arranged for her defender to arrive. Just as the laughter echoed through the boutique, the glass doors opened with a graceful whoosh. In stepped Maya, confident, radiant, and commanding attention without even trying. She wore a sleek white suit, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. A leather designer bag rested on her arm, and her presence turned heads instantly. Customers whispered, wondering who she was. Because Maya didn't just walk into a room, she owned it. And in that moment, the story was about to turn upside down. The employees who had mocked. Evelyn had no idea that the woman they belittled was the mother of one of the most successful businesswomen in the entire city. A woman whose net worth dwarfed every handbag and diamond necklace in the store got Evelyn looked up, her eyes widening with relief and pride as she saw her daughter. Maya's sharp eyes quickly swept the room, landing on her mother, and she instantly sensed the humiliation that had just unfolded. The laughter died down. The whispers grew quiet, because even before Maya spoke a word, the energy in the room shifted. But how would she respond? Would she unleash her fury right then and there? Or would she wait and make them feel the weight of their mistake in an even more powerful way? The room grew strangely quiet the moment Maya stepped inside. It wasn't just her beauty or her elegant clothing that captured attention. It was the aura of confidence that surrounded her. She walked with purpose, each step echoing against the polished marble floors as if announcing her arrival. Heads turned, conversations stopped, and even the most arrogant customers shifted uneasily. Evelyn, standing near the jewelry display with tears threatening to spill from her eyes, straightened her shoulders when she saw her daughter. It was as if Maya's presence alone restored a piece of her dignity. Jessica, the saleswoman who had mocked Evelyn most cruelly, blinked rapidly as she realized Maya was approaching. For the first time that day, a flicker of doubt appeared on her face. But Collins, the manager, remained smug, unaware of the storm about to hit him. Maya's eyes locked on her mother, scanning her face, her posture, the way she nervously twisted her hands. In an instant, Maya knew exactly what had happened. She didn't need to hear every word. The looks of guilt on the employees' faces told her everything. "Mom," Maya said softly, her voice filled with concern and love. "Are you all right?" Evelyn tried to nod, but her lips trembled. She didn't want to burden her daughter with the cruelty she had just endured, but Maya's sharp instincts left no room for denial. Jessica cleared her throat, trying to regain her composure. "Welcome to Lancaster Luxury, miss. How can we help you today?" Her tone was suddenly syrupy sweet, dripping with false politeness. But Maya didn't even glance at her. Instead, she turned to the display case her mother had been standing near. Her eyes fell on the emerald bracelet Evelyn had been admiring. "I'll take that," Maya said firmly, pointing at the bracelet. "Please box it up immediately." Lauren rushed to open the case, fumbling nervously as she placed the bracelet into a velvet-lined box. Her hands shook slightly, betraying her discomfort. Mr. Collins, however, still wore his arrogant smile. "That's a fine choice," he said smoothly, "though it is one of our more expensive pieces." "Are you sure you—" Maya cut him off with a single glance, the kind of look that could silence a room. "Do not finish that sentence." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, no one dared to move. Customers began to sense that something significant was unfolding, and they watched intently. Evelyn shifted uncomfortably, wanting to explain, but Maya gently took her hand, reassuring her with a squeeze. Then she turned her full attention to Collins and the saleswomen. "You thought you were clever," Maya said, her voice calm but icy, mocking a woman because of how she looks, because of what you assume she can or cannot afford. "Tell me, is this the kind of service your store is proud of? Humiliating customers because they don't fit your shallow image of wealth?" Jessica swallowed hard, her earlier confidence evaporating. Lauren looked down at the floor, unable to meet Maya's piercing gaze. Collins shifted in place, still trying to maintain control of the situation. "Ma'am, you must understand you embarrassed my mother in front of everyone," Maya snapped, her voice rising just enough to carry across the boutique. "You belittled her, mocked her, and tried to make her feel small. But let me tell you something. This woman is the reason I am who I am today. She worked harder than any of you could ever imagine. And while you sit here judging her, she raised a daughter who can buy every single thing in this store without blinking." A ripple of gasps spread among the other shoppers. Whispers grew louder, and suddenly all eyes were fixed on Maya and Evelyn. Maya reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a sleek black credit card, one reserved only for the world's wealthiest clients. She placed it on the counter with deliberate force. "Ring up the bracelet, and then show me the most expensive items you have in stock. Today, I'm buying from my mother. Everything she wants." Jessica and Lauren froze, their earlier laughter now replaced with wide-eyed fear. Mr. Collins' smug expression cracked for the first time, his lips pressing into a thin line as he realized the gravity of his mistake. Evelyn, overwhelmed by her daughter's fierce defense, felt tears streaming down her cheeks. But this time, they weren't tears of humiliation. They were tears of pride and vindication. The store, which only minutes earlier had been filled with cruel laughter, now buzzed with stunned silence. Everyone was beginning to understand that they had underestimated not just Evelyn, but the power of love, dignity, and the success born from resilience. And yet, Maya wasn't finished. She had only just begun. The room seemed frozen in time after Maya's thunderous declaration. Customers who had been casually browsing a moment earlier now lingered in the aisles, pretending to examine handbags or jewelry, but their ears were tuned only to the confrontation unraveling in front of them. Even the background music seemed quieter, as though the store itself were holding its breath. Jessica forced a weak smile, trying to recover some sense of control. "Of course, miss, we didn't mean any offense. It was all just—" "Don't insult me further by pretending it was a misunderstanding," Maya interrupted sharply. "I know exactly what you said. I know the looks, the whispers, the laughter. You judged my mother because she wasn't dressed in designer clothes, because she doesn't carry herself the way you think a wealthy woman should. And yet, she has more class and dignity in her little finger than this entire store has in its walls." The words cut deeper than any accusation Jessica or Collins had thrown at Evelyn earlier. Customers began nodding in agreement, some even murmuring things like, "She's right," and that was uncalled for. Collins shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening as he tried to keep his composure. "Now, let's not escalate this," he said carefully, though his voice wavered. "If your mother felt uncomfortable, we do apologize." But Maya wasn't done. She stepped closer, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her voice clear and commanding. "An apology after being caught isn't an apology, it's damage control. What I want is accountability. Tell me, is this how you train your staff? To belittle people based on their appearance? To decide who is worthy of respect and who isn't?" Colin's face reddened, and he opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The silence stretched on, growing heavier with every passing second. Evelyn gently tugged at her daughter's hand, whispering, "Maya, maybe that's enough." But Maya shook her head. "No, Mom, it's not enough. Not after what they did to you." Turning back to the stunned employees, Maya lifted her chin and said, "You mocked a woman who has sacrificed her entire life so that her children could have opportunities she never dreamed of. She cleaned houses, worked long hours, and endured hardship so that I could study, so that I could build the career I have today. And now, because of her strength and her resilience, I can stand here as one of the youngest self-made millionaires in New York City. Everything I am, I owe to her." And you dared to laugh at her. The audience of shoppers erupted into whispers, their admiration for Maya palpable. Several people pulled out their phones, discreetly recording the scene. It was the kind of confrontation that would go viral in an instant, the kind that left viewers cheering from behind their screens. Jessica's face burned with embarrassment, and Lauren busied herself behind the counter, pretending to straighten receipts just to avoid eye contact. Collins, however, tried one last desperate move. "Miss, while we regret this misunderstanding, you have to understand that we serve a certain clientele. That's where you're wrong." Maya snapped, her voice echoing through the store. Luxury isn't about fabric, price tags, or the shallow image you're selling. True luxury is respect, kindness, and the dignity with which you treat every person who walks through those doors. And today, you failed miserably. The weight of her words silenced Collins completely. His smugness was gone, replaced by the realization that his authority meant nothing in the face of Maya's righteous fury and the crowd's judgment. Maya then turned back to her mother, her expression softening instantly. "Mom, pick anything you want. Today, this store belongs to you." Evelyn hesitated, shaking her head. "Maya, you don't have to do this. I don't need their jewelry or their approval." But Maya smiled gently. "I know you don't need it, but you deserve it. You've always deserved the best, even when life didn't give it to you. And today, I want to show you, and everyone else in this room, just how much you mean to me." The crowd collectively held its breath, waiting for Evelyn's response. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not from humiliation this time, but from an overwhelming sense of pride and vindication. She finally nodded, her hand trembling slightly as she pointed toward a necklace glistening under the store's bright lights. "That one," she whispered. Maya's smile widened. "Perfect choice." She turned back to the employees, her eyes sharper than ever. "You heard her. Pack it up. And while you're at it, show her every piece in this store. Today, my mother gets the treatment she deserves, the kind you should have given her from the start." The employees scrambled into motion, their earlier arrogance replaced by fear and shame. And as they rushed to obey, Maya's words lingered in the air, reminding everyone present that true wealth wasn't about money, it was about character. But what happened next would not only silence the employees, but also leave the entire city talking for weeks to come. As Evelyn's necklace was carefully lifted from its glass pedestal and delicately placed into a velvet box, the atmosphere inside the store shifted. Customers no longer pretended to browse. They openly watched the unfolding scene with wide eyes, as though they were witnessing history being made. The whisper of tissue paper, the rustle of shopping bags, and the nervous footsteps of employees were the only sounds breaking the heavy silence. But Maya wasn't finished. She stood tall, radiating authority, her gaze sweeping across every corner of the store. "You see," she began, her voice calm yet commanding, "what happened here today is bigger than just a necklace or a shopping experience. It's a reflection of something far more dangerous, an attitude that says only those who look the part deserve respect. That mindset is poison, and it needs to be called out for what it is." Several people in the crowd nodded, their eyes fixed on her. Others lifted their phones higher, eager to capture every word. Social media feeds were already lighting up with live videos of the confrontation. Strangers online were typing furiously, outraged by the treatment Evelyn had endured and inspired by Maya's courage. Jessica, the sales associate who had led the mockery, clenched her jaw and muttered under her breath, but even her coworkers glared at her, silently blaming her for dragging them into this public disgrace. The humiliation was no longer just Evelyn's burden. It had flipped, and now the staff bore its crushing weight. Maya moved closer to her mother and placed a hand on her shoulder. "For years," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "you carried me on your back, Mom. You sacrificed everything to make sure I had what I needed. You taught me the value of hard work, the strength of dignity, and the importance of humility. And today, when they tried to strip you of your worth with their laughter, I couldn't stay silent. Because you are the reason I stand here today, not just successful, but proud of who I am." Evelyn's lips trembled as tears slid down her face. She had never heard her daughter speak with such power, such raw truth. For a moment, she forgot the store, the people, the phones recording. All she saw was her little girl, the one she had raised through sleepless nights and endless shifts, standing tall and defending her with the strength of a warrior. Then, without warning, Maya turned to the manager. "Collins," she said sharply, and he flinched at the sound of his name. "Earlier, you mocked my mother, questioning whether she even belonged here. You said people like her shouldn't waste your time. Tell me, do you still believe that now?" Collins swallowed hard, sweat forming at his temple. His voice was barely audible. "No, ma'am. I was wrong." But Maya didn't let him off so easily. Wrong doesn't begin to cover it. You weren't just rude. You weren't just dismissive. You made my mother feel small in front of strangers. That kind of cruelty can leave scars. And I won't let it go unchallenged. The crowd murmured in agreement, their disapproval of the staff growing louder. Maya, sensing the perfect moment, pressed further. "So here's what's going to happen. Not only will my mother get the VIP treatment today, but I want every person in this store to remember that wealth is not always visible. True wealth is in the heart, the sacrifices, and the love we give to others. My mother may not be draped in designer labels, but she is richer in spirit than any of you could ever imagine." The words hit harder than any luxury brand's slogan could. People began clapping, hesitant at first, then stronger, until the sound filled the store. Customers, strangers who had been bystanders minutes earlier, were now participants in Evelyn's vindication. Some even wiped tears from their eyes, touched by the raw truth of Maya's speech. Evelyn looked around, overwhelmed. Never in her life had she imagined a moment where the world would see her as Maya saw her, strong, deserving, dignified. It was as though every insult, every judgment she had endured in silence over the years was being erased in real time, replaced with applause and admiration. But Maya wasn't done yet. She raised her hand, signaling for quiet, and when the applause subsided, she said, "One more thing. I want everyone in this room, customers, staff, even strangers watching online, to take a moment and think about someone in your life who worked quietly in the background. Someone who gave up their dreams so that you could chase yours. Maybe it was your mother. Maybe your father. Maybe a grandparent. Whoever it was, honor them. Tell them thank you. Because they are the real heroes." The weight of her words sank deep into the hearts of everyone present. People exchanged glances, some visibly moved, others suddenly remembering sacrifices they had taken for granted. Evelyn squeezed her daughter's hand tightly, her pride overflowing. The store employees, once arrogant and smug, now stood silent and ashamed. They had been exposed, their prejudice dismantled in front of the world. Collins looked as though he wanted to vanish into the marble floor. Jessica's eyes glistened with tears, though whether they were from regret or humiliation, no one could tell. And yet, Maya remained calm, steady, powerful. She wasn't just defending her mother anymore, she was rewriting the story. What began as an attempt to humiliate a simple woman had transformed into a defining moment of truth, justice, and love. But little did the employees know, the real surprise was still to come. Because Maya was about to make a decision that would not only silence the store forever, but also leave an unforgettable mark on everyone who witnessed it, that the silence in the luxury store was heavy, almost suffocating, as Maya's words lingered in the air. Customers stood frozen, employees shifted uneasily, and Evelyn wiped her cheeks, still overwhelmed by the storm of emotions sweeping through her. But Maya wasn't finished, not yet. Her calm expression hinted at something much larger brewing beneath the surface, something that no one in that room could have anticipated. She reached into her sleek leather bag and pulled out a slim black folder. The staff exchanged confused glances as she placed it on the glass counter with deliberate precision. Collins, the manager, leaned forward, his brow furrowed in suspicion, while Jessica looked on, her face tight with dread. Maya opened the folder slowly, letting the suspense build. Inside were neatly stacked documents, stamped and signed, their bold letters catching the overhead light. With measured confidence, Maya tapped the first page and said, "For those who may not know, I'm not just a customer here. I'm also a silent partner and shareholder in this store's parent company." The room erupted into gasps. Several customers covered their mouths in shock, while others whispered frantically, unable to believe what they had just heard. Phones shook in trembling hands as the live streams caught every second of the revelation. Colin's face drained of color, his lips parting soundlessly. He stumbled back, gripping the counter for support. Jessica's hand shot to her mouth, as though she could stop herself from crying out. The staff who had once laughed so confidently at Evelyn now looked as though the ground beneath them was crumbling. Maya, unbothered, continued with unshakable authority. "That means I'm not just a client. I'm one of the people who decides what kind of business this place represents. And today, what I've seen disgusts me. My mother came in here to buy a gift, and instead of being treated with dignity, she was mocked, humiliated, and judged by the very people entrusted with upholding the values of this brand." Her voice grew sharper, cutting through the heavy silence. "Let me make something very clear. I didn't build my career, my reputation, and my life by stepping on others. I built it by respecting people, no matter how they look, dress, or speak. And if this store can't do the same, then it has no place carrying my name, my investment, or my trust." The weight of her words hit like a thunderclap. Customers turned, staring openly at the staff, their faces hard with judgment. The employees shifted nervously, sweat glistening on their brows. The once proud luxury store had been stripped bare, exposed for its arrogance and prejudice in front of everyone. Maya then turned to her mother, her expression softening. She picked up the velvet box containing the necklace and gently placed it in Evelyn's hands. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling slightly now, "this isn't just a necklace. It's a symbol, a reminder that you deserve to walk into any room, any store, any place in this country, and be treated with the respect you've earned 100 times over." Evelyn's hands shook as she held the box, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. The crowd's eyes glistened with tears as they watched the emotional exchange. A simple woman, once mocked and belittled, now stood at the center of a moment that would be remembered forever. But Maya wasn't done delivering shocks. She turned back to the employees and said firmly, "Effective immediately, I will be calling the board to review the leadership and staff of this location. Anyone who participated in today's behavior will be held accountable. This kind of treatment ends today." Jessica's knees buckled, and she slumped into a nearby chair, pale as a ghost. Collins stammered, "Ms. Thompson, please." But Maya cut him off with a single raised hand. "No excuses," she said coldly. "What you allowed to happen here is inexcusable. If you had treated my mother with an ounce of the courtesy you show to someone dripping in designer clothes, this humiliation could have been avoided. But instead, you chose arrogance. And now, the consequences will follow." The crowd erupted into applause. It wasn't polite clapping. It was thunderous, heartfelt, and full of energy. Customers cheered, some chanting Maya's name, while others reached out to pat Evelyn on the back, congratulating her. The store, once filled with disdain and laughter at her expense, now rang with praise and admiration. Evelyn pressed her hand against her chest, overwhelmed by the shift. Never had she imagined such a scene. For so long, she had felt invisible in places like this, overlooked and underestimated. And now, because of her daughter's strength and courage, she stood in the spotlight, vindicated in the most powerful way possible. Maya looked around at the crowd, her eyes sharp yet filled with pride. "Remember this moment," she said, "because it's not just about one store one mistake, or one necklace. It's about choosing respect over judgment, kindness over arrogance, and love over prejudice. If my mother can walk in here and be laughed at, then anyone can. And if we don't stand up against it, it will keep happening. But not today. Not anymore. The applause grew louder, echoing off the store's high ceilings. Customers cheered, employees hung their heads in shame, and Evelyn stood tall, her heart bursting with pride as she clutched the box in her hands. For the first time that day, she smiled. Not the small, shy smile she usually gave, but a wide, radiant one. Because in that moment, Evelyn knew something profound her worth had never been measured by the clothes on her back or the money in her pocket. It was written in the love of her daughter, in the sacrifices she had made, and in the dignity she carried every single day. And now, the entire world knew it too. The luxury store, once filled with whispers of ridicule, now buzzed with admiration and awe. The sound of applause slowly faded, replaced by the lingering silence of reflection. People were no longer looking at Maya as just a successful businesswoman or Evelyn as just a simple woman in plain clothes. They were looking at two women, mother and daughter, who had stood against prejudice and turned humiliation into triumph. Evelyn's eyes brimmed with tears, but this time they weren't tears of pain or shame. They were tears of pride, of joy, of vindication. She reached out and took her daughter's hand, squeezing it tightly. In that small gesture lay a lifetime of sacrifice and love, working long hours in the fields, skipping meals so her child could eat, wearing old clothes so Maya could go to school with dignity. Evelyn had given everything she had, not for herself, but for her daughter's future. And now, standing in the middle of that lavish store, she realized every sacrifice had been worth it. Maya leaned in, her voice soft yet powerful, and whispered so only her mother could hear, "Mom, this is your victory too. Everything I've achieved, it's because of you. You gave me the strength to fight, the courage to dream, and the love to believe in myself. Today, I'm not silencing them for me. I'm silencing them for you." Those words broke Evelyn's composure completely. She pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace, sobbing openly, no longer ashamed of her tears. Customers captured the moment, and videos flooded social media. But unlike the cruel clips of humiliation that often go viral, these were clips of redemption, of justice, of love. Millions would see not a woman being mocked, but a mother being celebrated. Collins and Jessica stood awkwardly to the side, their faces pale, their reputations in ruins. They had wanted to showcase their power, but instead they had exposed their weakness. Their arrogance had been dismantled not with anger, but with dignity. They had become symbols of everything wrong with judgment and prejudice. While Evelyn had become the symbol of resilience, Maya took her mother's hand once more and began walking toward the exit. As they passed through the aisles, something remarkable happened. Customers stepped aside respectfully, nodding at Evelyn, offering her warm smiles and kind words. Some even clapped softly, not out of pity, but out of genuine admiration. At the door, Evelyn paused. She looked back one last time at the glittering chandeliers, the polished counters, the employees who had once sneered at her, and instead of bitterness, she felt peace. Because she understood something that no luxury item could ever buy. Her worth had never depended on their approval. It had always been within her, waiting for the world to see. Outside, the sun was shining brightly, the city alive with its endless hum. Maya wrapped her arm around her mother's shoulders as they walked down the bustling street, side by side. Evelyn felt lighter than she had in years, her heart overflowing with pride for the daughter she had raised. And Maya felt stronger, knowing that no matter how high she rose in the world, she would always carry her mother's spirit within her. That day became more than just a story about a woman mocked in a store. It became a movement online, a lesson shared in homes, schools, and workplaces across the country. People debated it, commented on it, and shared it with their families, asking themselves one crucial question: would I have judged her too? And perhaps, in that self-reflection, real change began to spark. Because Evelyn's story wasn't just hers. It belonged to every person who had ever been underestimated, every soul who had ever been laughed at for looking out of place, and every heart that had ever been told they weren't enough. As Maya and Evelyn disappeared into the crowd, their bond unshaken and their dignity intact, the world was left with a simple but powerful truth. Respect isn't defined by wealth, clothes, or status. Respect is something every human being deserves. And sometimes it takes the quiet strength of a simple woman and the unshakable love of her daughter to remind us all of that.